Welcome to topic 3 of managing a web server. In this topic, we're talking about LAMP, or LAMPs, MariaDB, and VirtualHosts. So, what is LAMP? LAMP is Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP, although we're going to use a database called MariaDB instead of Apache. So the M actually becomes MariaDB. The PHP can actually be Python or Perl, but generally Linux and Apache are always Linux and Apache. So you get another type of setup called a WAMP server, and that's a Windows Apache database and language server. And you also get a LEMP server. That's using another web server called Nginx instead of Apache. So MariaDB, what is MariaDB? Right, MariaDB is a database server, and MariaDB is a drop-in replacement for MySQL. Okay, so MariaDB was actually created by the same people that created MySQL, and MariaDB is a pretty much exact replacement. So give or take a few little exceptions, if you know how to type MySQL commands, they will work just the same in MariaDB. And you can tell it's MariaDB with this little logo. It's like a little seal. Okay. Now, MariaDB is used by Wikipedia, WordPress, and Google. Okay. It's a very, very popular database server. And MariaDB lets you manage relational databases. So relational databases are a set of formally described tables from which data can be accessed or reassembled in many ways without having to reorganize those tables. So standard user and API of a relational database is the structured query language. So there's a bit of background about the inventor, E.F. Codd, a relational database model. This was when relational databases first came around in the 70s. So they've been around for a long time. Now, let's look at this relational database diagram. Here we have, and this will be running on a database server. Inside the database server, we will have various tables inside various, almost like containers, and we can access different fields from these tables and pull them out using this SQL language. So sometimes we could say that there could be a relationship. So we could say, for example, we could come up with a query from the participants table, give me the initials, and also give me the time that they logged on from the sessions table. Okay, sessions, date and time, and participants' age and information or something like that. So, okay, so those are relational databases. What about non-relational databases? Non-relational databases are NoSQL, sometimes called not only SQL, are databases that may support an SQL-like query language, but they provide a mechanism for storage and retrieval of data that's modeled in means other than in just tables. So modern, very, very big data applications often use NoSQL databases. So here's some examples of non-relational databases. There's a document database where everything's stored and it's in an individual document file. There's a graph database. These are used in social media, I think, a key value database and a wide column database. Okay, these are generally utilized with very, very big data. Now, the relational database we're going to use is MariaDB, and here's a little example of the trend of MySQL decreasing in popularity and MariaDB increasing in popularity. Now, what actually happened was, in a similar fashion to VirtualBox, Oracle took over MySQL. Now, I think it's quite relevant today because I believe Oracle are going to try and take over TikTok. I'm not sure how if that's true. I thought Microsoft were doing it, but I heard that it was Oracle. They seem to get into things. And what happened was when Oracle took over MySQL, the original people who authored it fell out with them in some way, and they took their ball and they went away and they made this totally open version called MariaDB, which people are moving towards now. So if you type MariaDB at the command line and you start MariaDB, you're going to need to know some commands. So let's have a look at some MariaDB commands. So show databases. This will show you all the databases that you have running on that server. Okay. Create a database is dead easy. You just type create database and then the name of the database you want to create and a semicolon. Okay. Use a database. So go into the database and look at the tables and things. You just type use and then the database name. Show tables, shows tables. Select star from my table will show everything from a table called my table. Select star from mysql.user will show users. Or will this create, let's see. All right, okay, so this command is quite important down here. Grant all privileges to star.star to username at localhost. So this username at localhost would be a user on the database server, and you'd be granting privileges to all the databases on that server to this username. Okay. Identified by a strong password just means you need to put a password in there with grant option. Okay. Grant is giving someone privileges, is giving them grants, all right, granting them the privilege to add a table or to take a table away. So that's the MariaDB database server we're going to use. And you might ask, why are we going to use the MariaDB database server? The reason is we're going to install a content management system. And in order to make a content management system work, we need a database of some sort. So this is the database we're going to use. So the next topic is multiple site hosting with Apache. So the Apache web server doesn't just host one web page. You can host many websites with Apache. And to do this, we use a thing called VirtualHosts. Okay, so we can have, let's say, more than one website, company1.example.com, company2.example.com, running on a single machine. These can be IP-based or name-based. And the fact that you're running on the same physical server isn't apparent to the end user. Okay, so we could be accessing 5 different websites and we'll never know if they're on the same, unless we do some kind of severe investigation, looking at Wireshark and being very, very, like, you know, serious about trying to find out what we're. The normal end user going to a website on their phone doesn't know where the server is or what type of server it is. So Apache was one of the first servers to support IP-based virtual hosts right out of the box. And the latter variant of virtual hosts, so name-based virtual host, sometimes called host-based or non-IP-based virtual hosts. So how do we host more than one website on the Apache server? Well, we need to have a way of telling the Apache server where these websites are. So we do that using a VirtualHost Directive. So we create a file, and inside the file, we open up tags like in HTML. Okay, we open a virtual host and close a virtual host. And inside those virtual host tags, we put the root, the document root, and the server name. Okay, so I've put 3 different examples in kind of different fonts here to show you what they might look like on different servers you log into. So here we have one that's var www.domain.com. That's where the website itself is stored. We can also tell Apache where the error and the custom log are. And we can give it a server name there. Here's another one here. This is going to be var www.example.com/public_HTML is where this website's stored. The server is example.com. Okay, this is running on port 80 on any IP on the server. That's with that star there. This would be a specific IP. So how do we go about setting this up? Well, we need to know about two different directories that are very important on the Apache server. Okay, the first directory is called sites available. Okay, now, so the steps to create a new site called mysite.com and then host it with Apache. It's important to understand the purpose of the default config files and sites available and sites enabled. So sites available are websites that we can set up on the server. Okay, what we never do, we never ever touch anything in, now let me get this right, we never touch anything in sites enabled. Okay, we never go into sites enabled and touch anything. Never, ever, ever change anything in there. You leave sites enabled alone. But you can change stuff in sites available. Okay, so let's say we want to make this new website. We're going to make a directory, and this -p here just means make a directory and also make all the parent directories along the way while you make it. So if my site didn't exist, if www didn't exist, if var didn't exist, it would make all of those to public HTML. Then change the ownership of this from root to EC. Okay, then change the permissions on the directory so public people can come in and look at the website. Change the permissions on everything in there, www. Then we're going to edit a file called index.html inside the public HTML folder. And we're going to put some boilerplate code in there. Welcome to mysite.com. So there we go. We've set up a directory. We've changed the owner away from root so that people can come and see it. We've changed the permissions and we've put in a simple web page, simple index page. Right. Step 2. Then we're going to make a virtual host file because we need to tell Apache where this website is. It doesn't just appear. You know, at the moment we've been editing the default page, and so that just appears, okay? But if we want to add some kind of custom configuration, Apache won't just know about this site. We need to teach Apache where the site is. So we're going to go into sites available, never sites enabled, always sites available. And we are going to see that in there are two config files, 000default.conf and ssl.conf. So for now, we can just use this 000default.conf. Now, what we don't want to do is edit this, okay? Because this is a template. This is an example file. So what we want to do is make a copy of 000default.conf, and we can call it anything we like. Now, I've just decided to call it mysite.com.conf because it's the configuration file of mysite.com. All right, so that's just my naming convention. I could call this elephant.com if I wanted, and it wouldn't matter because it's what's inside the file that's important. But let's say I left the company and I named them all after animals and then ran away. Someone might come in and have a very long day renaming them to being normal things. So once we've taken a copy of this default file here and given it a sensible name, which relates to the website. We haven't just called it copy default to default 1 or something silly like that. We're then going to make a virtual host. And inside, we're just going to create this tag, just like an HTML tag, open and close virtual host, any IP address, port 80, and we're just going to say the server name's mysite.com, and here is where the website pages are. All right, save that file. The very, very last step is we do Apache to enable site, mysite.com.conf. And then we do, and there's a typo there because that should be lowercase, systemctl restart Apache 2. You could just do reload, but it's better to do restart because if there's a problem in here, Apache will not start. Okay, it will throw an error at you telling you where the problem is. So now, see this command a2en site. This is a very important command because what this does is this makes a link or a copy of the config file from sites available and puts it into sites enabled, into the place we never touch, okay? The server takes care of that. So inside sites enabled are the enabled sites that have been enabled with A2EN site on that server, okay? We do not go into sites enabled and touch anything. We only go into sites available, and then we enable sites. Right, so it says here, the difference here is that virtual sites listed in sites enabled are served by Apache. The sites available are just sites that exist. So you can have 1,000 sites in sites available, okay? And none of them will be running on the web server until you've done A2EN site, till you've enabled the sites. You can also do A2 dis site and it will disable the site. It says here, stay out of sites enabled. Always make edits in sites available, then enable the site with the A2EN site command. And I've added some suggested reading if you want to know more about VirtualHosts. VirtualHosts have there's a lot of scope for configuration in there, but for today's purpose, we're just going to be setting up some simple stuff. So I'm going to pause the recording there, and then I'll show you what we're going to do in the lab. So let's pause for questions now. So in lab 3, we're going to set up a LAMP stack, a LAMP server, okay? And what we're going to do here is configure Apache, so install Apache, and then these are just a reminder of the systemctl commands, systemctl stop, status, restart, start. There are a few more as well. Just a reminder of some key commands. Then we're going to install MariaDB. And when we first install MariaDB, we have to run a setup script called MySQL secure installation. Now, if you just read through this, this will explain you have to either say yes or no at certain points. Okay, and that's explained in here. Then what we're going to do is we're going to create a simple database. So we're going to log into MariaDB and we're going to create a database called shop. All right, this is just a silly example that I came up with, a simple example. Then we're going to say use shop. So MariaDB prompt will change and the word shop will show up inside the prompt. We'll be using that database. Then we're going to create a table called the products table. And inside the products table, we're going to have a product ID, which is a number, okay? And we're going to say that can't be blank. And we want you to auto increment that. Then we're going to add another field called a product name, okay? And we're going to say that can't be blank either. And that can be variable characters, up to 100 possible characters. So we can't have products more than 100 characters long, all right? Then a primary key is going to be the product ID, which is automatically. And then we're going to run show tables, and we should be able to see our new table called products table. Then we're going to insert a product in there called my first product, and then we're going to show that product running, show it as it is in the database. So this will be interesting. You just have to be careful for doing a typo when you put this in. Watch out for missing out commas and things. And then to get out of MariaDB, you just type exit. Anytime you want to go back in, you just type MariaDB, username root, and just -p for password. But up here, it explains to you why you do that. So the last part is we're going to install PHP. Now, PHP is a glue language that lets us glue a website to a database. So it allows us to have dynamic content. And to do that, we just install these packages, and then we have to edit this file, dir.conf, and we need to move PHP from this position to this position. Save the file, restart Apache, and then if PHP is working, we should be able to make this PHP info page, and we should see that come up. And then finally, we're going to go through what I just explained, and we're going to make a website called Site2. Okay, and this time I've just put the background color to be yellow, so you know it's different from Site 1, which I believe the background color was red. And this just takes you through going into sites available, copying the default conf to site2.conf, and listening on a different port, adding a port to ports.conf, and then restarting Apache, and the page should load up. So lots of good stuff in this week. Let me show you the OVA file now. So the OVA file, the password is EC, the username is EC, and when you first load this up, you might notice that it doesn't have very much in it. It's very, very, very basic, all right? It runs with 2 gig of RAM, I think, and it'll run just fine, and it's only 2 gig in size, okay? So it won't take up very much resources. Now, one of the outcomes in managing a web server is that you have to update and upgrade a web server, okay? So there's no lab or anything for this. I'm just going to explain to you how this works. So what we can do is, if we open up the terminal, I think I did just tell it to open. Hold on, here it comes. Right. Now, you'll notice that in this OVA, I've changed the default font. This is a font called Source Code Pro by Adobe. So it's quite easy on the eyes. So if we do SU and then log in as root, if we type uname -a, okay, this will tell us the kernel, the Linux kernel version that we're running. And we can see that that came out in August last year. It's quite old. And if we type cat etc Debian version, we'll see that we're on version 10. Now, I told you that one of the tasks we need to do in this is to update the operating system. So we need to update and upgrade the kernel to the latest version, and it's really, really easy to do that. All we do is we type apt update -y and apt upgrade -y, and that will update and upgrade the server. And if you run these commands again, uname -a, you'll see that we'll be on a newer version of the kernel. And if we do cat etc Debian version, you'll see that we're on Debian 10.6 it should be, because 10.6 came out on Friday, on the 26th. I got an email about it. So the newest version is actually Debian. We're actually 0.6 versions behind. So I'm not going to run this just now because it will probably kill the bandwidth on the call, but those are the commands you should run to update and upgrade your server. And I'm going to pause the recording now. Oh, let me just show you one more feature of this as well. So now, if we were to edit a file, so let's say we are going to cd to home ec. Let's make a file, touchmyfile.com. Okay, vi at myfile.com. I've actually added into this a lot of plugins to vi. So now you've got this status bar down at the bottom here that'll tell you whereabouts you are in the file. Okay, so, and it'll also tell you what mode you're in. So if we want to type something, we need to press I for insert. You'll see that the status bar down at the bottom changes to blue to say you're insert. There's other modes as well. There's visual mode. Okay, that's red, visual line mode. So yeah, so if you're wanting to type something, you'll also find that there's we can do, now I can't quite remember the shortcut for it, but there is a way. Is it shift N? There's a way to get new tab open, and you can have 2 tabs running side by side. I can't remember it off the top of my head. There's also spell check and syntax highlighting and stuff. So this should work a wee bit better. You'll also notice as well, if you do programs, you'll see I've removed all the rubbish. So there's just what you need to do this subject. Those are really just what anyone needs on any computer. There's a calculator, a calendar, a PDF viewer, web browser, some settings, a software center, a music player, some weather, VI, a text editor, and a couple of Office packages. And that's all there is. Oh, and a file manager. That's all there is in this operating system. That's why I've managed to get it down to 2 gig. Now, one last thing I was going to show you is when Linux first starts, the kernel gets loaded. and the kernel is actually stored in a place called /boot. So we cd to /boot and type ls, you'll see, let's do ls -l. That's where the kernel is, all right? That's the kernel there, these files, okay? VMZ Linux. Now, when you run your apt update and apt upgrade, you might notice there will be more files in here. When you've got the newer version of the kernel in here, you can delete these older ones, all right? Let's do df-kh space dot. You'll see that this is unpacked to 15 gig. It won't take up 15 gig though. It unpacks itself to just under 4 gig when it's used. And this will be absolutely fine to do the rest of the subject.